Hey there, it's Max Doolin. This is the second challenge in the Karen series from the 6th year of the Spokane Cyber Cup called We Support Unions. So, let's get into it. Challenge 2, We Support Unions. You've logged in. Can you exfiltrate some data? Hints, try some weird characters where input is provided. There is a table called Users Ask Some Juicy Information, and they're given the tables.sql, which is this. Of course, this doesn't actually have the flag when they're given it, but the flag is within that table. So before, we just needed to modify the query to log in. Now we want to modify a query to actually return data. You could do a timing-based SQL injection on the login, but it would be much harder to do, so you don't want to do that. So once we're logged in, we're able to look at this blog. And if we look at one of the pages, we can see there's an ID here. And if we start messing around with the input, we can very quickly cause another exception. There's a syntax error in the SQL query, just like there was before, which is pretty cool. So this is another case of a SQL injection. This time, we can see that it is selecting the blog information and returning that. And we have, by putting the single quote in here, we've actually made the query invalid. So I'm going to copy this query over. And we're going to do the same thing as before. So we're going to say our input is this x. Of course, this needs to be an integer. If you put something like an a, then you'll also get the same error because it's like, I don't know what a is because it assumes it's a column when you do that. Cool. So we could just have this return a bunch of information. We could just return, or we could do ID equals 1 or 1 equals 1. And theoretically, that would return all of the blog information, which we can see here. However, we're not getting everything we want. See, there's another table that we actually want to exfiltrate the data from. And like I said, we're actually given that here. This table has a schema of 3 items. It has ID, username, and password. In this case, the password actually has the blog data. The password has the flag in it. And this blog table has 4 elements. That'll be crucial in a moment. So the classic way to exfiltrate data in this situation is to use what's called a union. In SQL, you can use a union to combine the parts or 2 parts of a query in order to return them all under the same boat. We can even look this up. We can say union in SQL. So here we can do select column 1 from table 1, select union, which is what we want to do, select column name from table 2. So the goal here is to do a union to get more information from the users table, which has our flag, and then output that. Cool. So if we look at that syntax, we can see it's something along these lines is what we're looking for. So this is roughly how you should do the second part of a union query. It's just union, select, and actually is effectively just the same as this. In fact, the union is just joining the 2 queries together effectively. So in this case, this x is our input. So we can do where ID equals 1. We're going to use a comment here, so we can effectively just ignore that at this point. Or, actually, no, we want to do a union. So union select star from users, I believe is the name of the table. Cool. So we're going to do a semicolon and then a dash dash. And we now know our input is this. So if we go back to our page and we try that, it's not going to work. and it gives you kind of a weird error message. It says the use select statements have a different number of columns. So if you were to Google this, you would notice that the two queries that we're doing have, the two tables we're querying from have different amount of elements that are being returned. This is bad. If they have a different amount of elements that are being returned, then they can't actually join correctly. And what's the problem with that star? So that's what we wanted ideally, is this. But that's not working for us right now. So what else can we do? Well, we can do union select, we can do stagnant values. So we can do select 1, 1, 1, 1 instead. It says syntax or access violation. Oh, I have two selects in there, that's why. Maybe we need a table. Let's do users. I have union, not union. Okay, so notice that all of the fields here are now returning 1, and that's pretty nice. So now that we know, we know how many elements there are. You notice the 1, 1, 1, and 1, but we want to know which ones are used where. So 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we can see that all the fields are actually being displayed, or just 3 of the fields. The final 3 are being used. So those are the ones we're going to use for a table. So the key thing that we did wrong initially was that we were using the wrong amount of columns. Now we know the right amount of columns, we can do this correctly. So here's our query from before. Instead of using select star, we're going to do 1 because we don't care about that value. And then from the users table, we have ID, username, and password. ID, username, password. Actually, we don't even want to use ID because there's going to be a name collision between the two different tables. So now we're just going to use 1 just to make life easier. So if you try this again, we now get an element from the table. There's actually only 1 username in there, username and password. So with that, we have successfully extracted the flag from the super admin user. This is a classic SQL injection. I think it's super fun. You don't see them as much anymore, like I said, but it's still really good to know. I think that idea of modifying strings that are being interpreted is everywhere, though. Like command injection is a thing. I once found a log injection that allowed me to get RC on a computer. So I think this concept of injecting your input into a dynamic string is everywhere. It's not just SQL injection. So I think it's a really good thing to learn and try to understand. Also, I love the ingenuity of trying to extract this data. We're using some features of SQL in order to extract this. I think it's important that you have to know that. You can't just pull out whatever you want. You have to understand what you can do within the restraints of the language itself. So, cool. I hope you had a good time and enjoyed this challenge. See you in the next video.